On today's episode, the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves are playing again. They've been playing so many times over and over and over and over and over again, and they're going to do it on Christmas here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode at the beginning of the week here on Sunday night, Monday morning for most of you when you decide to tune in on your entry into work for the week. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Ryan Blackburn. I'm the host of Locked On Nuggets here at Mile High Sports as well in the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. He is Matt Moore at HP Basketball. I was about to say Pickaxe and Roll again. The Denver Dig, Hardwood Paroxysm, the Action Network. You can go follow Matt's work over there. He also just did a new article on Jonas Valanciunas and the G League, and we are going to talk about some of that stuff in the third segment. But before that, Matt, we got some news right at the end of the week, a Friday afternoon news dump after all of the shows were done. The Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves are among 10 teams that will be playing on Christmas Day. This often happens where prime games, and they also release the opening night schedule. Denver's not involved with that. But the primary games, the primetime games of the NBA season are often released beforehand by Shams Charania of ESPN. These were some interesting games on the schedule. What was your first reaction when you saw that the Nuggets would be facing the Timberwolves?
A little bit surprised. I actually kind of thought that they might have gotten the OKC matchup. I thought that with the Nuggets kind of being considered either tier 1 or tier 2 as a contender, or, either considered like it's either them or the Rockets in the West. Like if you're asking like who's the biggest threat, it's either them or Houston. They're kind of in their own tier. I thought maybe they would have gotten the OKC matchup. League went in a different direction, even though they picked 1,700 West teams for Christmas. My first thought, as always, is what about me, the protagonist of reality, and if we're gonna have a home game, I want it as late as possible so my kids aren't mad. The last time that we had like one that was in the day, my kids revolted. Like they were livid that I had to leave Christmas at like 11. So glad to have the night game, the nightcap versus the Wolves. I do think it's a little bit of a rivalry. I do think it's a little bit of a showcase game. I think it's an opportunity. Like there's history between these two teams. And so I think the league needs to lean into those matchups. And I think it's a good, especially after the late season, like all the games late in the season between the Wolves and the Nuggets are always great. So if you get even a fraction of that, with the showcase on Christmas, it's a pretty good opportunity to showcase both Nikola Jokic and Anthony Edwards. Good matchup against Gobert. Obviously, you've got the new look kind of Nuggets. I think it's a smart choice by the NBA to include Denver and Minnesota in this kind of true Western contenders. A little bit of a division rivalry here.
100%. It does feel like obviously Denver needed to be involved in some way, shape, or form. 8 West teams that were involved, only 2 East teams that were involved. You can't really put in Boston anymore because Jason Tatum's going to be out. I guess you could, but not going to put in Jason Tatum, not going to put in Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers because Tyrese Halliburton's not there either. So were you surprised that the NBA just decided to basically put the Western Conference on display?
No, everybody feels the same way, which is like the East is a shell. I think it gets a little overstated sometimes. We run away with it a little bit. I think the West is a little bit overrated. I don't know that the East is underrated, though. It's more like, I don't know that the West is a death gauntlet that it was a couple of years ago, but also the East is a mess. Like, it just is. And I think some teams will fill the void there. Like, that's what I'm excited about is, like, I think some teams, I'm personally picking Detroit. I think some teams going to come in and really fill that void and will look like, oh, hey, like, they've joined that group with Boston and Indiana out for the season. And maybe just a 1-year thing, but I think one team will have like a really phenomenal season and really make that jump next year into that level of contention in the Eastern Conference. But in the West, it's like, look, if you said OKC's not going to win, because we all have to be like, it's going to be OKC, and OKC's awesome, and we just like, you got to bend the knee. But if you get past that, then it's like, hey, I like Denver. I like Houston. I like the Clippers. The Lakers could do it. Minnesota has gone to the Western Conference Finals twice. On and on and on. You can kind of make the case for these different squads to be able to make a run. And that means that and also the bigger thing that was when I kind of looked at it, Ryan, when I looked at that schedule announcement from Shams, it was just like stars. You just go up and down and you're like, there's certain markets that are always going to be in there. But those two teams happen to also be relevant. Like New York and LA are always going to play on Christmas, no matter how bad they are. But like they also have mega stars like Luka, and the Knicks are at least competitive, right? Like Jalen's a star, if not a superstar. But you go up and down, and you just like Victor Wembanyama, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, like all of these guys. And so I do think the one guy that's missing there is like we're not gonna showcase Giannis. We're just gonna. Giannis doesn't matter. I'm a little side-eyed at that a little bit, but I get it because of where the Bucks are. But I do think it's overall, I can't be upset with it. I do know that by Christmas, we're going to be like, good job, NBA. You've got this crap team that's underperforming wild expectations, and you didn't put this East team in. We'll definitely be doing that once we get to December.
Well, it's pretty easy to say that, especially because 8 of the West teams are in. Like, naturally, one of those teams, at least, probably multiple, are going to be under 500 at some point when Christmas is here. Because, like you said, teams will get hurt. There will be some freak things. Maybe there's something that just doesn't work out as quickly or as easy as possible. It's possible that Houston could do it. Like,
can you believe that this is going to be a Denver fans doubleheader? So it's going to be Broncos at Chiefs leading right into Wolves Nuggets.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I don't know what you're going to do from a viewership standpoint, to be honest. Like,
I mean, I will be at the Nuggets game. I will do my job. I will be locked in. That comes first. That's my job. I'll have.
No, I mean, like you're gonna have to drive up to the arena and miss a fair amount of that game.
Yep, that's just how it goes. That's
how I know. So sorry to hear it.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's like when you've seen the movie 17 of 18 times.
Okay. It is going to be interesting. We already knew that the NBA didn't really care that much about Denver area fans in general from last year when the NBA and NHL decided to concurrently show 2 different game 7s, like 30 minutes apart from each other in the first round of the playoffs for both the NHL, NBA, the Avs and Nuggets. So
I don't think that's reflective of that, though. I think it's more of like, I think there's a belief, and I think it's backed up by data research, that there's not much crossover between NHL and NBA. Now there are, like, I love it. I love the Avs. Love the Avs. First hockey team I ever liked was the Avs. I used to watch them in the first championship run when I was in high school. And so, but I think that there's like a demographic shift there. I don't think that necessarily, I don't think that that's like a case of Denver being put down on, which I know you enjoy pointing out from time to time.
I do, because I think it is a feeling that Nuggets fans consistently have, and maybe this isn't the reason for that, but like it does happen more frequently than people like to admit. Going back, and we'll last question before we hit a break. You were talking about Minnesota and the Nuggets being a rivalry. Like, Denver won a championship, and on the way they had to go through Minnesota back in 2023. And then the last 2 years in a row, the Wolves have they've kind of dominated Denver. I don't think that 7-game series that the Nuggets and Wolves played was as close as it ultimately looked like. The Wolves won game 6 by 50, and they had to like the Nuggets were completely on their heels for that entire series and had to give everything to just get to a game 7, in my opinion. But the Wolves have dominated Denver over the course of the past couple of years, in my mind. Do you think that changes this coming season, and could Christmas be a change from that?
Whoo! I think Jamal, took a step forward facing the elite defenders last year. Like, he had a lot of really good performances versus those better defenders who we used to be like, they are going to eat him up.
Right.
And like he actually had some pretty strong performances. So that helps take away one of the advantages. Mike was invisible in every matchup versus the Wolves. And so if Cam can give them anything versus what Mike was able to provide, then that's a big plus. You do have the ability, I think, with a better bench to not get slaughtered in the Nas Reed minutes. I think that matters. I think, although JV and versus Nas in the small ball lineup is not ideal. I don't love that. I think the Nuggets don't think the Wolves have their number. I don't think that they think that. I think the front office is like, never want to see them again. But I don't think the players themselves are like, we can't beat these guys. It's not Raptors with LeBron.
No.
Like, it's not any sort of, it's just all these games are close and they're just like, we just got to execute a little bit better. And now with a better team, I think that gap probably narrows. The last time the Nuggets had the better roster, they won. That was when they won, was when they had a way better roster. And since they slipped and then didn't add anybody, the Wolves caught back up. I do think this is going to be either a 3-1 series win for Denver or a 2-2 split.
Well, that would be great because Nuggets fans I know are very tired of seeing the Minnesota Timberwolves. It would be nice to see if Denver could defeat them on a Christmas Day matchup. When we come back, why don't we go over some questions I have for you and some questions I think Nuggets fans will have about the schedule itself and what Nuggets fans actually want from the schedule this season. We'll be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. All right. Let's do a read on Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. I know that that's a big deal in today's market. That's such a massive importance for just going to go see music that you love. With Gametime, you can do that. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEADONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. Back at it, Locked On Nuggets. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, folks. Would really, really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with us on this August 10th as we're going through the stuff, and we're gonna probably see a schedule drop over the course of this week. That would be the expectation. It's why the Christmas schedule just came out. The opening schedule came out. By the way, preseason schedule came out for Denver as well, and that starts in San Diego. After a press release that the Nuggets had about a game that they are going to have against, you guessed it, the Minnesota Timberwolves on October 4th. So probably going to back that into a training camp in San Diego, I would guess, Matt. And I do think that there are going to be, they're probably going to be out there for a while is what I would say.
I had missed this. I just never caught. They've done this for several years, and maybe I just forgot it. But it was hilarious to me when the schedule came out and they talked about the preseason schedule. And the first line of this is, the Denver Nuggets kick off their preseason schedule October 4th in San Diego against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Nuggets will serve as the home team at Pechanga Arena, which is part of the 48-acre Midway Rising development project led by the Kroenke Group.
Oh, weird. Kind of weird how that just works out, Matt. It's all going according to plan.
Save a little money, make a little money. That's the way the Kroenkes do business. So yeah, but not bad. I mean, they like it out there. I don't think it's bad for them to get away. I think it's a good. I think it's good for them to have like the routine of it. So I don't mind. I don't mind the trip to San Diego. I'm going to try and get out there for a day or two for coverage of your Denver Nuggets training camp.
Yeah, we could do a buddy cop podcast out there. That'd be great. That would be that's the goal.
I'm gonna get you a big white hat fedora. And we're gonna do it on the beach with palm trees. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna get you a
Gotta do the portable mics. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets.
Yeah, there you go.
that's the way to do it. We're out here putting our feet in the sand. It's great. And like for a place like Denver where they're going to be training at altitude, they're going to be training here, they're going to be in the snow for a lot of the time. It is nice. I do get it to get out to a place like that. They did San Diego training camp the year they won the title. So it's there's a precedent for it, I think. Okay. For the rest of the schedule, which will surely come out, I think if I recall, your perspective on this in the past has been 82 games. They're all, you know what you're going to get. They're all going to be in a different order. Some teams are going to like their schedule. Every team's going to hate their schedule, but there's going to be portions of the schedule that are advantageous to you and portions of the schedule that are advantageous to other people. And it all mostly balances out in the end. That's your expectation, but from a Nuggets perspective, like what do they want? What is going to be the goal for the Nuggets in terms of what they want to see? Do you want to see like tough teams at the beginning, at the end, a whole bunch of back-to-backs? Where do they go?
So I don't think all schedules are created equal, because I do think that the number of back-to-backs you have, the number of 4 and 5s if you have any, the number where you have your tough stretches, the biggest thing, honestly, is schedule density. So last year, the Nuggets had a very spread out schedule in the beginning, which is why it was such a bummer that they underperformed, where it was like, those games versus those bad teams that they dropped early were really problematic, because they had a tough schedule in terms of opponent, but they had lots of games. And then in the middle, they had their schedule balanced out in terms of how tough it was, but it was more condensed. Like they played a ton of games between Thanksgiving and the deadline. And that's like where it gets, and that's where the tension builds, and that's where you get like bad team chemistry, and like all of that stuff kind of starts to rack up on you. What I think you want, and I'm going to be curious to see whether they get rid of effectively the bye week, which is that they gave every team in the beginning like the opportunity to rest up for the in-season tournament. They gave them like 4 or 5 days early. The problem with that is that nobody wanted it. Nobody. They wanted, like, it only made them more mad when they're on a 4 and 5 in January. Like, you talk to these teams and they're like, where's that 5 days off? We just didn't play. Where's that now? Right? That makes them really frustrated. And even if you keep the 4 and 5, if it's like, hey, you're going to play 4 and 5, and then you're going to have 5 days off. Great. Awesome. They can do that. That's honestly like, hey, this is grueling. We're going to buckle up for it. We're going to come out. We're going to win 3 of 4. And then we're going to have a couple of days off, and we're going to go relax, and then we're going to practice.
Right.
And that would be really great. Like, that's how the schedule should be managed. So I'm going to be curious to see whether they move that from November into the middle of the season. Probably not. I'm going to be curious to see with Denver. They've gotten tough starts in terms of opponent the last couple of years. And I'm going to be curious to see whether they get like a little bit of an easier one where it's like, hey, you're actually getting, you're going to take a November, you're actually got a 5-game road trip in November, and you're going to the East Coast, and you're going to knock out Charlotte and Atlanta and Washington. And Atlanta's going to be tough this year, but Charlotte and Washington, these teams that they underperformed against last year, and see if they can build some chemistry on the road early. That would be ideal. Yeah. I think you want an East Coast road trip early, knock that out of the way. And then January, December, what you really want is you want as few back-to-backs in December and January as you can get. February and March is a little bit easier because you got 2 weeks for the All-Star break, which is just nonsense. Everybody's checked out. It's senioritis.
Yeah.
And then you've got March, which is just, I've talked about this before. It's wonky. And some teams but that's where they build their legitimate team chemistry. And some teams it's just like screwing around. But like that December, January stretch is the most important time for you to be able to build what you're going to do.
One thing I hope they try to get away from, if they can, is the 1-game road trips that they would often have. It always felt like they would go, okay, 2 home games, 1 road game, and they pop on over to Dallas, pop on over to Utah, pop on over to OKC or wherever it was on a back-to-back. And then you come back, or then you like maybe that's the kickoff of a longer road trip after that. But they would always felt like I didn't feel like there were as many trips that they were able to take, and it felt like they were breaking up like it wasn't as many. Okay, there were 5-6 game homestands, road stands, things like that. There aren't that many of those anymore, and I know it's by design, but like it would be nice if they could just be like, "Hey, we're going to go on the road," or "Hey, we're going to be at home," and it never felt that way.
Okay, well, I'll play devil's advocate here. So if we know that the big problem with NBA fatigue is the actual travel time, if you're doing this one trip, it's like, okay, you got a 3-hour flight to OKC, you got a 3-hour flight back, and then you're done, and then you're back home. So you sleep in your bed one night, play at home, you take a 3-hour flight, you play, you take a 3-hour flight, you're home. I think that's probably better than like these stretches where you're in Philadelphia, you're in New York, you're in Indiana, you're in Miami, you're back to Denver, you're going, or,
the balance there, of course, because it's the transition from like to and fro that you're getting. Because like you want to avoid taking, like, if you can, a flight before your game. Like if you keep going home away, home away, home away, there's 82 flights. If you build in more road trips, like, yes, on the road it'll be bad, but then you get the opportunity to build in more homestands, would be my counter there, where you're not flying at all.
See, and I think the homestands are actually, I think, a little bad. That's my hot take, is like you get too comfortable. And honestly, like, guys have talked about this, like the home has its own set of distractions, right?
That's true.
And so especially when they're home, it's like they know that they're home. The families are all there. They've got stuff going on because they know, like, this week he's going to be home. Versus it's like, yeah, he's here for 2 days and then he's gone again. Then he's back for 2 days and then he's gone again. He's back for 4 days. So I don't necessarily like. I would rather my big thing is just like try and limit the amount of time that they're in the air. Try and limit the amount of time that they are traveling between hotel, like from arena to hotel. That stretch of time is the problem. And so you want to minimize those as much as possible. And the long road trips are like 3-hour flight, 2-hour flight, 1-hour flight, 2-hour flight, 3-hour flight with all the hotel stuff in there. And then you got in at 4 a.m., got on back, 4 a.m. on a back-to-back because stuff happens, and like the reality, like, as I will always return to, is like, we all know what the answer is here, which is if you can't do this where you can fit in 82 games because of the arena schedule, you need to reduce the number of games. We should not be playing back-to-backs. Like, we just know this is not a good idea. We know the fatigue it takes on it. We know the players constantly talk about it. Like, just reduce the schedule, but we'll never do it.
In my expansion podcast on Pickaxe and Roll, I talked about reducing it down to a 78-game schedule, 68-game regular season, and then 10-game NBA Cup. That
it would be, yeah. I mean, theoretically, with that, you could build out. You could just eliminate back-to-backs. So,
I like it. I think it would make a lot of sense. So they'll never do it.
I feel like stretching the season is also the other way to do this, where it's like, if you just reduce it by a little bit, like you're talking about, and then you, instead of it being the third weekend of October, it's like, hey, October 1st is when the season starts, or the first Tuesday in October is when it starts. Training camp is the first week in September. The problem with that is European basketball is the international competition. Because, like, I commented this on the dig today. Like, if Serbia makes the finals, it's like September 17th.
Yeah.
And then training camp's the 25th. It's like 8 days.
It's not a lot of time. He'll get a little bit of a break, but like he's like, Jokic has had plenty of time. Valanciunas they've had plenty of time up until this point. So now they're just kind of in basketball mode. So they're gonna have to stay in basketball mode, unfortunately. When we come back, I have one more question about the schedule, but then we'll transition into G League conversation. Matt has some things that he would like to discuss about the G League. We'll be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. Back at it. Final segment, Locked On Nuggets. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. One more thing, Matt, for you. How many more Sunday matinees would you like? Because it felt like the Nuggets had 2 of them during this past season, like Sunday matinees, because it's like a family thing that I think that for whatever reason there just weren't as many in this past years, like 2 or 3. Like, is that something that you think that they should be trying to get to on weekends? Or I know that that's something that you've expressed some interest in the past.
So what's going to be interesting is NBC takes over and they have Sundays slotted as part of their schedule allotment, but ESPN also has it. Right. So but what that means is that you do have an earlier start time because they won't compete against each other. So you'll have this earlier start time available. I am always of the opinion that, especially on Sundays, I think it's great to have a day where it's like, hey, the kids can go. They're not going to be getting home at like 11, right before school the next day. For families to be able to bring the whole family to the game if they can afford the $7,000 it takes to go to a game these days. Lower your prices, NBA. That's not a Nuggets thing. That's just everybody. I also look selfishly, huge difference maker for me. It's a huge. We're always like, this is amazing. Every single and we've actually kind of talked about this on the show before. The 8 o'clock starts. There's the hour between 7 and 8 warps for us, where somehow the hour between 7 and 8 is 3 hours long. Every beat writer will tell you it's so bizarre when we have the 8 o'clock games. It feels entirely different than the 7 o'clock starts. But for the matinee, I think it's a good opportunity to showcase the Nuggets. I grew up watching NBC or NBA on NBC with those Sunday double headers in the afternoon. I think that's a great time. You get home from church or whatever you do in the Sunday morning, and you have lunch, and then I would go and I would just sit in front of the TV and watch NBA basketball for 6 hours, and it was amazing. Watching Jordan versus Barkley, and so I think bringing that kind of thing back is good. In general, I think the other advantage here is just we do have to get away from things like that situation in the playoffs where they played 36 hours later. And I'm always of the opinion, if you got an opportunity to start a game earlier, which gives the team more time, do that. Always do that. But the problem is you got to take care of it on the other end too, which is if the traveling team is coming in on Friday, you got to make sure that they don't play on Friday or Saturday. Because if they play Friday night, now they're in the situation where they're facing 36 hours. Yeah. And that's what you kind of want to avoid.
100%. It's hard. This is a very difficult thing for the NBA to have to manage, but hopefully they come up with something good. Okay. G League. You had an article that came out earlier today that mentioned some stuff on the G League. Do you want to expand upon that a little bit and just kind of share some thoughts? We've been bandying about some things that G League related in our group chat.
Yeah. So the Gold announced a bunch of changes. Andre Miller is no longer the head coach. Ryan Bowen, who's been an assistant coach with Denver the entire time, except for a brief stint where he was with the Sixers. He's been an assistant coach in Denver, and he actually goes back to the Carl days.
Wow.
As does Chad Iskey. Chad was his number one assistant, right, and was in line was interviewed for other head coaching jobs. And then Chad's actually taken over as general manager. Chad Iskey's taken over as general manager of the Gold.
Tenzer was the general manager right before him.
Yeah. And so Iskey goes from a scout to GM of the G League, and Bowen takes over, and they've added some other folks in there as well. One, I think it's very interesting that 2 guys that were Carl guys getting these promotional spots doesn't have to mean anything. I just think it's kind of notable because it's not like they have shied away from that connection, because these guys have been in Denver and they've been part of the organization the whole time. But it is kind of it's a little bit of I don't know if Ryan Bowen would consider it a promotion.
No.
I'm glad that Bowen's willing to take it on. I think he's going to teach them a lot. The biggest thing is there's a much better chance with Ryan going there and coaching this team that you're going to have the kind of synergy that you need. For those that don't know, my career I was covering the G League. It was an opportunity for me to get my foot in the door, and I was covering the Austin Toros, and I actually covered the G League at large. And I know I have great stories from covering that time, especially before it got as corporatized as it has. And what's interesting though is the teams that have the most success are the teams that have real synergy and continuity from the main team down. RGV, Rio Grande Valley, was running Maury ball before the Rockets implemented it. Maury tasked them with, what does it look like if we just shoot threes and layups?
Yeah.
I don't want you to shoot mid-range anymore. Just do this. And provided a model that RGB won the title, by the way. And some great coaches have come out of the G League. Chris Finch is one of them. Nick Nurse, another one. So there's an opportunity here to develop a whatever David Alman's principles are going to be. You can instill those in the gold and actually have them run the same stuff offensively, defensively. Not always. You're not going to build Jokic ball, but you can build some of the principles in, and so that they're at least comfortable coming up and then understanding the processes. If nothing else, you can duplicate, hey, this is how we approach things. We're going to do this same thing down there. And that consistency actually helps, I think, a lot with the transition for guys. I think the Nuggets, as much as we've been advocates, I've always been you need veterans guy, but we've been banging that drum. Well, they got them. Now that you're not like, we're just going to play the young guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Now find some guys that you can develop. And then the G League, I think, should be part of that. Like, I think that should be part of that conversation. They should be sending down these guys and getting them minutes to see what they can do. Because you just need game and game prep and strength and conditioning work. And work on them in a professional atmosphere there and build that chemistry up. So I just thought it was like some interesting stuff that's going on with the gold. Gonna reach out and see if we can't get some more information on what's up with the gold this season coming up.
I think it's a great thing. And as the Nuggets go, it's never felt like they've been a program. It's always felt like over the course of the last 7-8 seasons, it's been the top program. It's been Jokic and Malone and Murray and Porter and Aaron Gordon and these guys. And then everything else is like, okay, we're gonna kind of piecemeal everything behind that. And it hasn't necessarily felt like there's been enough love to the lower levels in terms of this kind of grassroots development and the ability to kind of take some players that are not as consistent and don't get those consistent run and they aren't ready for Jokic ball and making them ready and putting them into a position where they can become ready. The 3 two-way guys that they have this year, Spencer Jones, Curtis Jones, and Tamar Bates. Those all 3 seem like players that could absolutely spend extensive time down there. I do not expect those 3 guys to play an NBA role on a consistent basis. But when you're putting them down there, it can't just be like, hey, go down here to play because you're not playing up here. There has to be an actual plan in mind. And maybe that's, again, getting some more information in terms of what to expect there. But yeah, Dragonton says it here. Could Holmes play in the G League? There's no reason why he shouldn't play in the G League for a team like Denver that, like, if he's not in the rotation immediately, like, he should absolutely be down there and getting the conditioning to as good of a place as it can be and continuing to get as many reps with the ball in his hands as possible.
See, and I love that idea. It's really hard to get guys out of the idea of it being a demotion and it being an insult. It's really hard to get that. It's still a problem in the league. It shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah. But
there's a number of reasons. The league has made some bad decisions. The owners have made some bad decisions with how they treat the G League. Like, again, Daryl Morey was always like, this is not a demotion. This is just like an opportunity for you to get the kind of development that you need. It's a development league. And so, like, we're sending you down there because we want you to become a spot up shooter. So you're going to spot up and shoot in games. And it helps, I think, with what I think is how teams run it badly is when they're just like, go down there and show everything that you can do. No one's going to care because it's going to be like, good for you. You scored 35 versus the G League. Nobody cares.
Right.
You can't do it in the NBA because it's not the G League. Nobody's going to believe in you unless you get a random opportunity to break out in a game in the NBA. And then people will be like, hey, maybe. But conversely, if you're like, hey, we want you to work on this. We want you to work on rebounding. We want you to run point. We want you to run small forward. We want you to focus on your wing defense. Hey, I want you to work on your shot on creation for others. Like, you need to be able to run pick and roll, right? As a big wing. That's the way that you use the G League. And what I really want to be outspoken about with this is it's just so important to be serious about it, is not to be like, go down there and get some minutes up. Don't do that. Actually be like, hey, Duran, we don't have any minutes for you. We've got our rotation set right now. We're going to send you down and you're going to get your confidence and your conditioning back. That trust that you don't have because you tore your Achilles, you get to focus on that in limited minutes as we ramp you up and be very careful with you under the guise of a coach that is an assistant coach in Denver. That's the way to do it. And this is the G League can be a genuine tool in making your organization better, but you got to take it seriously.
Yeah. Hopefully Denver does. We will see whether that is something that they put together. Maybe David Adelman being kind of somebody who's seen this over the course of several years being in Denver, now moving into the head coaching chair. Maybe he can instill some of those principles as well. But we'll find out. I think that's going to do it, folks, for this episode of Locked On Nuggets. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Matt's got one more thing.
On Wednesday, Tuesday night show, it will be on Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Mountain Time, youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. We're going to talk about the question some people put in the chat of, are they going to do anything with the 15th roster spot? In the comments, let us know who you think they should go get with that 15th roster spot, and we'll talk about them on Tuesday night.
Love it. Everybody, if it's Malcolm Brogdon, great. If it's Russell Westbrook, great. If it's DeAnthony Melton and he hopefully doesn't get signed by the Golden State Golden State Warriors, then great. Let us know who you think can be that guy. Thank you so much, everybody. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. We'll talk to you guys on Tuesday night.